The Tom Woods Show, episode 1369, bonus episode.
Prepare to set fire to the index card of allowable opinion. Your daily dose of liberty education starts here. The Tom Woods Show.
Hey everybody, Tom Woods here with a bonus episode for you. I do topics that are a little bit off the libertarian beaten path for these bonus episodes. This one is actually 2 episodes of Catholic Book Radio, the podcast Roger McCaffrey hosts. The first one of the 2 is us talking Catholic Church politics, and I always find that fun and interesting. And people who've said they're not necessarily interested in the topic, they love hearing the banter between Roger and me. And it's totally different from my banter with anybody else. We recorded these episodes sitting in the back of my house, and it was just fun. But it's 2 episodes, though, so the second episode is not expressly a Catholic episode. Roger was asking me, it was like a top 5 list, and I won't tell you top 5 what, because he didn't give me any notice either, and that made it really difficult to do. But they're fun conversations, and I thought you might enjoy listening to them. I will link at tomwoods.com to where you can find Roger's podcast on SoundCloud. So that'll be tomwoods.com/1369. And just so you know, Roger McCaffrey is the publisher of Roman Catholic books. He was also the founding publisher of the Latin Mass magazine. He is a direct mail genius. I mean, he writes letters, the sort of letters that in the old days when you would get mail, physical mail, and physical mailings, by the way, still work. People are overlooking them at their own peril. They really work. He would get you to open that envelope. There'd be something on that envelope that would make you open it. Then you'd read his letter, and it would make you take your wallet out and send that money in. He's a genius when it comes to that. His family created, they founded the Conservative Book Club, but also Arlington House Publishers. His father, Neil McCaffrey, was involved there. As you may know, if you know your libertarian history, Arlington House is the publisher that published Mises. They published his book, Bureaucracy. They published Rothbard's Conceived in Liberty. They published great works that really did not have a publishing outlet at that time. So we really owe a great debt of gratitude to Arlington House Publishers and the McCaffrey family. So, having said that, and also Roger is the godfather of Regina and Amy, 2 of my daughters. So what more is there to say? Great man, and he's been on before. I'll link to the previous episodes on the show notes page if you find you just can't get enough McCaffrey. And here we go. Enjoy.
From New York and Rome, Catholic Book Radio, with your host, Roger McCaffrey.
Tom Woods.
Roger McCaffrey.
It's February 2019, and here we are with another one of our powerful, timeless podcasts. Wait till people get this. So what's going on, before I get into the heavy Catholic material, what's going on with your business that we keep reading about, if those of us who are on your e-lists keep reading about?
Well, so far so good this year. I'll say this, I think I'm getting little by little better at coming up with email subject lines and things of the sort. So in the wake of the Green New Deal rollout, where we were told about cow gas and we're going to get rid of air travel in your car, right. My subject line for a product I'm doing where I'm giving away a lot of bonuses, I'm calling it the Woods New Deal. And the subject line is the Woods New Deal. If you like your cow, you can keep it. I thought that was a McCaffrey. McCaffrey would use that line.
That's a brilliant one. So but are people going to know where to go? Where they just go to tomwoods.com? Are people to catch some of these fabulous?
They should.
Daily emails from you?
They should. They go to tomwoods.com. They'll see a button to press to hop on there. And I've got just so many individual pages. Like I have my Bernie Sanders is Wrong book. So I actually bought the domain name bernieiswrong.com. Good. And that also puts them on there. So there are a lot of ways to get on there.
But now, if you'll permit me, the Bernie Sanders is Wrong book could be updated to capture some of the other celebrity idiots.
I already own
side.
AOCiswrong.com. I own that.
Okay.
That will be put to good use.
Okay, so there's another book coming. There's another ebook coming.
Oh, it's coming. And it may have some of the same material because these people are highly unoriginal.
They sure are. I would say they read the same books, but it turns out they don't read.
They don't.
But they're very articulate, and Republicans, not to mention others, but let's psychoanalyze Republicans, for decades have felt on the defensive because these leftists are so glib. But it turns out, and you'd think they've been reading The Nation or something. Hell no, they're not reading anything.
Yeah, I know.
And the stupidities that come from the Howard Deans and people who happens to be vicious on top of it.
Right.
But
it's like
he's a doctor, therefore he's got to know.
Right. Yeah. Everything about everything.
Yeah. And he thinks he does know everything about everything. If you ever watch this creep in action, but go ahead.
Well, it just seems to me that the more shallow they are, the more shrill they are.
Yeah.
You would think that there'd be a kind of self-consciousness that would make you keep your mouth shut, but
no,
it is not so. Humility
is not part of the left's. It's not one of their strengths.
No, it's not.
Well, we could segue right into our leftist pope. I know we've hit this topic before, but he provides a stream of fresh material. First of all, every airplane ride by itself. You could just do a book on the Pope's airplane press conferences. They need to sedate him when he's on those airplanes if they,
You can't understand what he's talking about half the time.
And yet you know what he's getting at, and it ain't good.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
The last airplane press conference, and there is less oxygen in those planes. I don't know if that's affecting his, brain function perhaps, but
I do pretty well on planes, so I'm not.
I do. I produce, you're right. But the last press conference was between Panama City and Rome, and I think he came out against methane gas, but I'm not sure. Do you have any recall as to the specific outrages of that press conference?
I don't remember that particular one, but it's like his job is to be as banal and uninteresting and predictable and irrelevant as possible.
Yeah, and yet this is relevant stuff. I mean, because what he does now is he contrasts the deepest concerns in the hearts of people who are trying to be Christians with what he calls more important concerns.
Right.
So you'd think that the mass slaughter of innocents, which of course he's against, I mean, he's on record as being against abortion, but you'd think that would be kind of paramount. But no, it turns out that, youth unemployment and personal loneliness are right up there in the top 5 beside the slaughter of innocent human beings by the millions every year. So I don't consider harmless.
Well, I don't mean that it's harmless. I mean that how does he answer the question, what does the world need the Catholic Church for?
Right.
And if it's to tell people about climate change, we already have people doing that.
Right.
So what do we need the church for? That's what I mean by irrelevant. I mean, he's doing plenty of damage, but he's got no unique position. What does he think the USP of the Catholic Church is?
Right.
I honestly don't know.
Right. He doesn't talk about the sacraments. And it's the sacraments, the sacramental life of the church and our own that either dispose us to heaven or don't, Of course, that incorporates prayer. He does occasionally talk about, the importance of prayer, but I don't hear a lot of sacramental theology or sacraments talk at all from the Holy See, at least from him extemporaneously. And that includes the Wednesday audiences. So, so that's more to your point. All right, we've done enough on Pope Francis. Let's move on.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, we can refer people to our previous conversations.
Right. But, you occasionally touch on, and I've been on a couple of times on your own Tom Woods show, you occasionally touch on matters Catholic, but it's getting harder to do that, isn't it?
I just find it so demoralizing. I used to write about a lot of this stuff, and then I just found that it was putting me in a really very depressing spot And I just felt like, given that, I mean, when I write articles about secular topics, I mean, there's a 1 in a million chance that I might be able to move the needle slightly. Like, for instance, on nullification, I don't think I'm being unreasonable to suggest that my book and my work on that subject has actually had real world consequences. There are a lot of states that have stood up on certain laws and said, we're not going to do X and Y. And I think that had a little bit to do with me. Whereas if I say the bishops are terrible, there's not a thing that doesn't do anything other than put me in a really depressed position. So I basically just stopped doing it.
Right.
Because I thought other people are already saying that stuff and it doesn't help me. And it doesn't, there's no prospect for anything to change.
Right. Well,
But what I did do though was I wrote that book through your company, Sacred Then and Sacred Now.
Right. That's still a Roman Catholic Books publishing title. That's my Catholic company.
Yeah.
It's still available.
And I did that because there's something that I could do that nobody else was going to do, which was to write a short, accessible layman's guide to the Old Latin Mass at a time when it was being made more widely available.
By Pope Benedict XVI.
And I thought, I have some knowledge here and I can do this and it will do some people some good. That actually will have an actual effect on actual people. So, and it makes me feel good to do it.
Right.
So I did it.
Right. And the important thing about that book is it's positive. And Pache, some of my flame-throwing colleagues, you need to have a positive book you can present to clergy who are interested but not interested in polemics. And so this book lays out very briefly and intelligently the history of the revival of the traditional Latin Mass in the last 40 years, basically. It's not meant to be a doctoral dissertation. It just explains to people how Benedict did what he did, why, the top easy to understand arguments for it. And it's an excellent book. We still sell it.
Oh, thanks.
By the way, booksforcatholics.com is the website that people can find that on. Do not get it from Tom Woods. Only he benefits in that case.
Well, I will point out on that it's pretty rare to find the non-polemical Woods. So this is like a collector's item for that reason alone.
Oh, but it's a great book. Really, really. I mean, you're gonna look back in 20 years and then I'm going to charge you $100 per book when you want extra copies. No,
I'm getting such a steal on it now.
It's a great piece of work that's going to last, honestly, 100 years from now. That thing is going to be of interest. And if we can find foreign language publishers, you and I should start looking for that. It has more relevance. Benedict is even still alive. I actually, we don't even have that translated into Spanish, do we? We have no foreign deals on that book.
Yeah, that's true.
Well,
I've had probably 15 foreign language translations of my book on Western civilization.
Which brings me to my next point, which is that for our Catholic listeners, let's list your 3 or 4 most relevant books, even if they're not directly Catholic in scope. I would say how the church built Western civilization, published by Regnery.
Yep.
Secondly, The Church and the Market.
Yep, that one.
Thirdly, of course, Sacred Then and Sacred Now. What's the subtitle? The Return of the
Old Latin Mass.
Okay.
Yeah.
And fourthly, The Politically Incorrect Guide to History.
American history, yeah. To
American history. Right? Am I fair? Those are the top.
I mean, those are the big, most of the popular ones. I'll say that the How the Catholic Church Built Western Civilization book, when that came out in paperback, it included a foreword by, and now this just goes to show my age, I cannot remember. He was considered like the second Ratzinger. He was the president of the Spanish Episcopal Conference. He may have been the head of
Cañizares.
Cañizares, thank goodness.
I know.
I hope he doesn't find out that I couldn't remember his name.
Oh, now that you mention that,
he wrote a beautiful foreword to that book.
In the Spanish edition.
In the Spanish edition, then we translated it into English for the paperback edition in the U.S.
Who did the paperback in the U.S.?
So it was Regnery again.
And is that a print?
Oh, no. That thing still moves, yeah.
Because Cañizares is a dark horse candidate for the papacy.
I thought I wanted him to win this time for my own selfish reasons.
Selfish reasons. Yeah, because actually he's rather, in terms of current politics, he's kind of hopelessly muddle-headed, frankly, but he appreciates the historical nature of the church and
also,
real history.
He's a man of real influence.
Yeah, he was especially. Now he's back. Now he's primate of Spain.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, he was in the hierarchy. He was in the Vatican dicastery when he wrote that endorsement. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's important. I had forgotten about his endorsement, but anyway,
Woods has some little heft around the world.
Well,
when he wants to.
And if I can throw back, I knew him because not because we're palsy, but because there was a book that he was involved in that I did, and I think he's got a blurb on. This is for Roman Catholic Books publishers. So it's a small world when two of us, American traditionalist types, are throwing names around like Canizares. Again, he could be, because he's older now, that makes him an increased possibility for a compromise pick for the papacy. We're talking now in February 2019.
But see, he would be viewed as being a Benedict XVII.
Right, which is a joke. I'm sorry to say. He's not even as tough as Benedict. I assure you, but he would at least be a guy who represents the old school, and that's why he would be elected.
I guess, but my point would be, would that, in the newly reconstituted Francis College of Cardinals, at the actual conclave, would that not hurt him? Because doesn't have a reputation as a progressive.
Correct. It would help him, but that's not to say I mean he's a dark horse. There's several like that they're going to come in as centrists because, well, that's what they are. And if a centrist is opted for, then Canizares is going to be he's one of the top 4 centrist candidates. How about that?
All right. Well, then are there any candidates to the right of him who are plausible?
Yes.
Who would they be?
Cardinal Ranjith.
I'm interviewing you. Ranjith is still papabile?
Oh, definitely. As a he has a 10% chance in my book, in the McCaffrey book, but so does Canizares, because if they go European, if the argument is we need a European, we need to retrace our steps, we need to capture the Ratzinger wing of the voting cardinals. These men, Ranjith and Canizares each has 20 to 25 votes going in. That's 25% of what that's a third of what they need to be elected. So that makes them papabile, even if they're not likely. The more likelies are Schönborn, who's now a man of the Catholic left, but has a reputation for orthodoxy because he wrote the New Catechism 25 years ago. And Napier, who's an African.
Oh, he's a disaster.
He's all over the map. And that makes him possible, believe it or not, because he appeals to different voting blocks. So those are at least the ones I see.
I think I've interacted with him on Twitter.
Have you? Then he condemned. So you too have been condemned by him.
I think I was ignored by him, which is how I like to keep things.
Right. Well, he'll notice you. I'll give you the right words to get a reaction from him.
Okay. I think I probably know what they are.
Anyway. Okay. So I could start this program number 2, or we could do a short program. Well, I want to do 2 with you today.
Yeah.
I did want to note that we're sitting in your palace down here in Florida. It's one of your homes.
It's my only home. Let's not.
And just as in the days of the pharaohs, there are cats everywhere.
I know one of them gave birth, and so we got to figure out how to get the other cat, taken care of. But we're able to sit, even in February, we're able to sit outdoors.
I love this. I love this. Something? Yeah, it's a little brisk, but then there's flowing water, which all the pharaohs always had.
But yesterday it was in the 80s. Today's just a fluke.
I know it's a bit. I don't know. Tomorrow is supposed to go back up, but anyway. So
people are dying to know what the weather was 3 weeks earlier when we recorded this, right?
Well. This will be out next week. So,
okay. All right. So a week ago, guys, there was a brisk day in Central Florida.
So I've given all the website info. Oh, and the new issue of the Traditionalist magazine is out. So that can be found. Good luck finding it on the web, my friends. Well, I'm having such problems with
I got mine hand delivered to me.
Right.
That's old school.
But
not even the post office.
There is a PDF. It is available on the web, but you have to go to CatholicMediaApostolate.com to find it, or try booksforcatholics.com. But if you want a free copy, just email us and leave us your snail mail address, and we'll mail you a physical copy free. We'll take a donation, but we'll send you a free copy. So anyway, Tom, let's just hold everything for the next program is going to be a list of various lists that I want to get from you, and I will say no more, but your list programs are some good ones. So I've got an invention of my own. But tell me this, is this program, even though I'm interviewing you, do we even stand a chance at being a bonus episode?
I think I would make this a bonus, just because it's just fun and casual and enjoyable, and I think people would get a kick out of our banter.
Okay.
Because our banter is unlike my banter with anyone else. It's much more subdued. Because when I'm in your presence, one thing I notice as a writer is that if I read somebody over and over and over, like a lot, and then I go write, I start echoing that person's writing style. I just can't help it. So I was reading a lot of George Reisman at one point, and all my writing sounded like George Reisman. So likewise, when you come in and you're very soft-spoken and reserved, like you'll be shooting darts rhetorically at people, but it's all very subdued. I get in this kind of subdued kind of mood, like I'm the DJ of a jazz radio station. I just can't help it.
Well, then we should reminisce for 2 more minutes right now about our trip to Rome about 20.
Oh, could that? Yeah, it was more than 20 years ago.
24 years ago, 23 years ago, we had to tape a program. You taped a bunch. You did some good work, but we were in the courtyard of the Hotel Sant'Anna, which is still there. I still use that hotel. People should go there, Hotel Sant'Anna. And they should tell them that I said to come and stay there. It's a great little boutique hotel right at the Vatican. So we were in the courtyard, and we were sailing along doing programs and interviews. You were, but then in the middle of one of them, one of the maids flushed it. She was cleaning.
I remember that
she flushed the toilet. And we couldn't erase that from the program. We had to keep it authentic. I
thought it was authentic. That's
Who were you interviewing?
I interviewed, I don't know.
Monsignor Soseman during that?
I don't remember which one it was. We interviewed Wilton Wynn.
Wilton Wynn. He died in 2010, unfortunately. I got to go back and get that tape. I forgot that we interviewed Wilton Wynn.
Now, he was a longtime Vatican observer. What publication was he with?
He was the Time magazine. He was the dean of the Time magazine Rome European correspondence. And he went from Cairo to Beirut and then to Rome in 1963 and never left. So for 25 years, he was the Rome bureau chief for Time magazine. Did he have stories? Some of which he withheld from you.
Yeah, right. And I think back on that, by the way, I was such a I know you were very kind to me in how you assessed my abilities, but I was such a stilted interviewer compared to how I am now. In fact, none of my listeners even know I did those programs because I look back on them and I think, oh, I was just so clunky. I don't want anybody to know.
Well, that was the era of stilt. So stilt was still in the 90s. I mean, only Reagan had just finished his presidency, 8 years before. And he was he was smooth, but he was wonderfully formal. If you go back and look at him, study him now compared to these other presidents who shall remain nameless.
Yeah.
Some of them. And, there was anyway. So anyway, Wilton Wynn. Yeah, those would be very interesting interviews. I'm going to go I'm actually going to try to revive those now that you mention it. Who else did you interview on that Where Catholics Meet program?
Yeah, I'm sure. Obviously, Monsignor Barrero, the late Monsignor Barrero.
Monsignor Barrero, talk about stilted.
I can't believe
he was very formal. He's very formal, wonderfully informal privately, but never even privately did he let go of his priestly dignity, Anyway, the other one you would have interviewed would be Professor Robert Phillips, I would guess.
I'm sure I interviewed Robert Phillips.
Formerly philosophy professor at the University of Connecticut. Wonderful. He's an author for us. Roman Catholic books, and still around, still going strong, but retired, very retired. He goes around doing Amtrak, cross-country Amtrak rides and lobbying for the continued federal funding of Amtrak. Bob and I don't always agree.
Everyone is entitled to one deviation.
Right, and that's Bob's deviation. He's pro-Amtrak.
I remember you and I were at some church somewhere. We must have been out of town, and we were going to what was at that time the so-called indult mass. And they had one of those baptismal fonts where the water is constantly flowing, like it's run by electricity. Yeah, just like the pool here. And I remember saying, I have to admit, I actually like these. And you paused and said, everybody is entitled to one deviation.
That still captures my view. Anyway, thanks, Tom. We'll go. The next program is going to be even more electric than this one.
And if this one doesn't show up as a bonus episode, it was a little bit too electric for the Tom Woods Show audience.
Thanks.
All right, folks, that was the first of the episodes. Here's the second one.
From New York and Rome, Catholic Book Radio, with your host, Roger McCaffrey.
Tom Woods, we're here for part 2.
Here we go. And I'm having a glass of wine, which I so rarely do.
Me too, but it's conducive to this program. When I haven't told you the topic yet.
Oh, here we go.
It's a good topic. It's a great topic. And I've got a lot like this. So for you and I are going to be booked for the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay,
for radio,
good.
For podcasts. So let me hit you with my first. I need your list of, which I used to do this to my father. Similarly, I'd say, who are the 3 most interesting people you've ever known? And they don't have to be Catholics, although we're doing this for Catholic Book Radio. It'd be nice if you could throw in a Catholic for me instead of one of your radical friends.
Am I able to pause and can you remove?
Yeah, we can remove stuff, but we won't.
But I want to think this over because then if I come up with somebody
give me 5 and so 3.
That's the problem. It's not that it's too few. It's hard to think of somebody that quickly that it's been.
Who comes? You mean who's number 1? Because I know 5 guys who are very interesting. Well, they have to be alive. Since I'm asking you the questions. Would you like me to make them living human beings?
Let's try to make them living. Yeah.
Okay, that's probably more fun because that way we can get at least 5 listeners.
Right. Well,
each one of them.
I would say Pat Buchanan is on there.
Right. Okay. Ditto here, but it's not my list; it's your list.
Yeah. So that's
you got to talk about each one of them a little bit after you list them.
Yeah. All right. So we got Pat. And the thing is, I know that throughout my life, I've walked around after talking to somebody because I've met such tremendous people, and I've walked away and said, that is an impressive person. But there's just so many. There's so many great ones that I've met. I mean, even if I just thought of the academics that I've met, I would say Clyde Wilson, Paul Gottfried. I'd say Lou Rockwell is a very, very serious, impressive
you just
person.
Listed Protestant, Catholic, Jew.
Yeah, but not in that order. But yeah.
No, but I mean, Gottfried, very interesting man, prolific writer, even before computers arrived on the scene. By the way, the background is one of your damn neighbors, if I can.
Yeah.
Using a jack. This figures that I would come all this way to be in your house, to be in your courtyard, and then the guy behind you decides he's going to fix his asphalt.
Well, remember we talked in the last episode about the person who flushed a toilet during our interview in Rome.
The Hotel Santana.
So it could be worse.
It could be worse, but this is pretty bad. If this goes on for long, I mean.
Yeah, I mean,
we might have to cut him out. We might have to edit the program.
I did meet Eric von Kuhnelt-Ledeen, but I wouldn't say I knew him.
Right.
Whereas I can drop Buchanan a note and he'll write back to me. So that's what it means to know somebody, I think.
Right. Well, Ledeen would have written back to you, and you would have received an essay.
Yeah, I know.
It's funny that Carl Keating, whom I had on a couple of weeks ago, mentioned von Kuhnelt-Ledeen as one of his most admired, and he had long exchanges with him and visited him in Tyrol. Anyway, go ahead.
I mean,
So you've just listed 5 already.
yeah, probably so. I mean,
But
there's so many people I've gotten to know a little bit, or I've met, or whatever. I mean, I've been able to travel so much and go to so many conferences and stuff. But now, in terms of people who have influenced me, I would also say Don Livingston, emeritus at Emory University.
what's he, an economist?
No, he's a philosopher, but who got me understanding really the real value of decentralization, because he's the one who really painted the medieval picture for me of what European society looked like without a single, irresistible, infallible sovereign authority ruling over it.
Right.
And the symbiotic relation of all the different associations in society and how that worked, and how it's a devolution to have a Hobbesian sovereign with plenary power to overrule all the liberties of all these associations. And I got that only because of Livingston.
Mm-hmm. In other words, you're referring to presidents and leaders of states today.
Yeah, who
Macron,
they may in theory say that it's perfectly fine for such and such association to have such and such freedom, but that's at their generous, indulgence. They can modify that anytime they want to. Right.
Yeah. As Wilton Wynne said to me in the middle of his hymn to the beauty and wondrousness of Rome and of Italy and how he would die. In fact, he said he's from Louisiana, but he said, if I had to move back to America, it would kill me. We were sitting down having lunch in the middle of Rome, but, within 3 minutes, he was saying to me about his apartment, in which he had a great apartment, I might add, in Parioli near the embassy. And, but he had an idyllic life. He had Italian health care for better or worse, et cetera. But he said, they, meaning the government, they could throw me out anytime they want.
Yeah, there you
So
go.
we all have this weird relationship with our government. We know they could squish us anytime they want, like they tried to do to Roger Stone, whether no matter what your opinion is of him, to send 17 armed vehicles or 17 men, including frogmen, and then drag him out of his Florida house, much like this house, I might add, in his bare feet, and his poor wife, forcing her out of her bedroom. She wasn't charged with anything at all. I don't know if you're aware if they did that to her. The FBI dragged her out politely. It was good of them to be polite, but they forced these people out of their houses and put them in handcuffs. And these are the people. And then 5 minutes from now, we'll be talking about the greatness of it's great to live in a free country. Well, we know that isn't the case.
Yeah, yeah. I can't get my mind off this darn question of yours. I mean, I remember being very impressed by Bishop Fillet years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Bishop Fillet of the Society of St. Pius X. I remember meeting him, and it was just 3 people in the room. It was him and a priest and me. And we just had a conversation.
So where were you, up in Connecticut? Or
I don't remember exactly where it was, but
was it East or Midwest or where?
Must have been East. But I remember he was very, very much divided. I mean, he wanted an agreement with Rome. He wasn't just belligerently refusing.
Was this 10 years ago? 20?
This would have been like 2001, 2002, 2003.
That's a long. I mean, that's 18 years ago.
Yeah. But he was a really serious man.
Right.
And I think he had real Catholic instinct.
Yeah, definitely.
And he had a real, people overuse gravitas, but you knew you were in the presence of something and somebody when you were with him.
Right.
And I didn't necessarily agree with the whole Pius X ecclesiology, all that stuff, but I walked out of there thinking this is a good man who's going to try to make the best decision he can.
Which is what he did.
Yeah.
I mean, he was superior general until recently, actually. And as superior general, he navigated to a point where they could talk to Pope Benedict, the new Pope Benedict, and got him to lift the excommunications of the 4 bishops, himself included, and got him to normalize the Mass in canon law, regularize the traditional Mass. So now it's a legitimate and perfectly co-equal option for priests in canon law, which priests now will still be punished if they show too much love for this right, but it's in canon law now, and that's all part of Fillet's effort.
Now it's not that everybody in the society is made equal. I mean, there are some people I'm sure would make me crazy, but I did also meet, and I'm not saying that he's the most impressive person because you did ask me, interesting people, but as long as we're on Fillet, I had a private meeting for about an hour with Bishop Williamson years ago because he came. I was living on Long Island. He was coming through Long Island, and he called ahead to the local society parish, and he said, I want to meet with Woods. So we met for an hour behind closed doors and just talked. And I remember asking him, suppose Rome came to you and said, all right, you can have everything you want. We're going to regularize all your mass locations and schools and your masses and everything. We accept it. It's fine. You're in perfectly good standing. Everything, you can continue as you have been, except with our blessing. Would you accept that? And he said no to that. And I remember being struck that you would say no when you're not being asked to do anything.
Right. I'm with you all the way, Tom. I mean, that is its own comment.
Yeah, that was that.
I mean, that
in
is
fact, I have to
equivalent.
say, Roger, that made me look back at Archbishop Lefebvre, and it actually dropped him a notch in my estimation.
But he didn't. But Lefebvre did not stand for that. He did ordain Williamson a mistake, but he was pressured to do that at the end in 1988. There was internal pressure, largely brought to bear, in my opinion, by Williamson himself, then Father Williamson. In any event, he did not represent the SSPX and has been expelled from the SSPX.
Oh, yeah, years ago, right.
That's like saying, exactly like saying, suppose I brought you $1 billion lottery check, would you, this is not a tough question. And if to say no to that is to render yourself suspect on many levels.
Indeed.
So, I mean, next person. Who else did you admire, Tom?
Well, I mean, I remember thinking for a long time that if I could write as well and as bitingly as Tom Fleming, who was with the Rockford Institute for a long time, I would be a happy man. And for a long time, Fleming and I were friendly, and I thought, I'm going to be the one friend of his he's not going to turn on and denounce. Didn't work out, Roger, but man, I think he's a really smart guy. I think he's a great. I would not want to be on the other side of his pen. I have been.
Yeah, I know. I noticed.
It's not fun.
I noticed. We could do a whole program on that.
Yeah.
But he too is a Catholic, a convert.
Yeah.
By the way, well, it's funny the people you've mentioned. There's no other connection among them, but Williamson was a convert. I know he's not someone who influenced you, but you found him impressive as a spokesman.
But yeah, in terms of people who influenced me, who are living, I mean, it would certainly be
Rockwell. Almost goes without saying.
Rockwell goes without saying. All those people I mentioned, all those academics like Clyde Wilson, Paul Gottfried, these are all in a rogues gallery. You're not supposed to like any of these people.
You're not supposed to like them.
But the people who say I'm not supposed to like them have 50 fewer IQ points than these people.
Yes,
so
of
I
course.
don't really care what they say.
Right.
Buchanan certainly influenced me. Livingston influenced me. I've been lucky that I've gotten to meet really, really impressive people. I would also mention a guy, maybe you met him at the Randolph Club, Bill Kaufman. Does that name ring a bell to you?
Sure. I know Bill.
I love Bill because he's a Catholic too. He's more of probably like in the Dorothy Day tradition.
Yeah.
But
I don't always agree with him, but
I don't
he's
always
very
agree with him
skillful
either,
as a
but
writer.
He's an amazing writer and a very good-hearted man.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the kind of guy who he lives where he grew up.
Yeah.
And that matters to him. And I remember
that's some of his best writing is about,
I know.
is about home.
That thing about home. And thing is, I've moved all over the place. And I remember when I was not a kid, but like a high school student, the fashionable thing among the high school students in North Andover, Massachusetts, was to kind of feel like, well, we're going to get out of this sleepy town the first chance we get. Right. We're going to go see the world. And if you wound up staying in town and you went to college in town, well, we wouldn't say you were a loser, but that was the strong implication. And now I look back on it and I thought, those are the people who got it right. Because I've lived all over the place and I've gone all over the place, but my little town where I grew up, I never found anything better.
Yeah, I found in my case something that was cheaper. That's where we are.
Yeah, fair enough.
But
I couldn't afford to live in my old town.
Right.
That was the problem.
Right, but redolent of my town and far enough away from the problems that crept from New York, the city itself, over the border into my town. But I agree. And Kaufman, some of his best writing is about that.
Yeah.
Flat out. And he's got a collection. Of course, I forget the title of his book. Ain't My America
is such a great book.
That's his collection, isn't it?
That's like the history of non-interventionism among middle Americans.
Okay, so it's not the collection, but it's still, it's a book worth having.
Yeah, it's a book worth having. The weird thing about it is it doesn't mention Ron Paul. How do you have a book on non-intervention and there's no Ron Paul?
I don't know.
Right? It's like a book on Batman. There's no Joker. What's the deal?
I agree, but probably because it's an essay collection.
Yeah, right, and exactly. So, and he loves Ron.
Yeah,
he spoke at Ron's big rally for the Republic.
Is Paul not even mentioned in the?
I believe there is no mention of him.
Okay, well then he has to do a new edition.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I'll have to scold him about that.
Okay, so Ron Paul's another one who's had a major.
By the way, do you realize all these people, they're all people that I met as a result of the fact that Lew Rockwell did the extremely unfashionable thing of reaching out to traditionalist conservatives in the early 1990s to say, now that the Soviet Union has collapsed and we might be able to agree on foreign policy now, let's put our heads together and see what we can all do together. He has been raked over the coals for this.
Hence the John Randolph Club.
The John Randolph Club, which was a wonderful
founder of that thing.
Yeah, and I was the youngest member. I was made officially a member, I think, in 1994. I was 22. And I loved that group. And I met so many really smart people. Right. And basically a bunch of intellectual pygmies ever since then have said, that's terrible. He wanted to reach out to the right wing. Notice it's never wrong to reach out to the left wing. Right. Never. That's never wrong.
Which is never interested in you.
Yeah, right. I know exactly. You reach out, they bite your hand off. Right. But actually more than that, they're so uninterested. They'll leave your hand sitting there for 10 years. They don't even bother. It's not even worth biting off as far as they're concerned. But I got to meet these people who are tremendous intellects because of that move by Lew. So when people say, I don't like the Lew Rockwell, the Murray Rothbard of the early 90s. But why not? Like that was really great stuff. We got to meet really tremendous people.
Right. Well, Rothbard, of course, Jewish and secular and above all, libertarian. I mean, that's really the mark. But he's also a historian that you had to take very seriously. You had to. But to dismiss him, I don't even want to get into the Rothbard thing because it brings out the venom in people. But because he was pro-abortion on my opinion, spurious and ridiculous
it was awful. His arguments were terrible. And Father Sadowski really leveled him.
Yeah. I mean, okay. But Murray, if ever somebody were in the realm of the academic on such things, it was Murray Rothbard anyway.
And incidentally, toward the end of his life, you could see, I believe he was shifting on that because he was talking about reasonable restrictions and things like that. So he's moving in that direction.
But nobody on the Catholic right wants to hear these things that ameliorate or mitigate some of his earlier views. They don't even want to hear these points brought up. But he was actually pro. He was pro Lefebvre.
Yeah, I know. He was sound on almost everything.
Well, I can send you a letter he wrote to my father from Vegas, of all places, in which he digresses. His letters were massive exercises in digression and because
he knew so much, he wanted to pull everything in that he knew.
He'd start out about the John Randolph Club, and all of a sudden he was talking about Lefebvre.
And by the way, I was about to say, I forgot myself for a minute, Roger. I was thinking I was hosting my own show. I was going to say, not everybody listening is going to know who Lefebvre is. But listening to this show, they will.
Well,
but would you mind just in case I do use this, would you mind saying a little something so that they know what the heck we're talking about? Then we'll get back to Rothbard.
Archbishop Lefebvre was a major figure at the Second Vatican Council who opposed most of the thrust of the Second Vatican Council, and founded his own seminary roughly 5 years after the council in order to rescue, with Vatican approval, by the way, to rescue French and then later other European seminarians who were being crushed in basically Catholic left-wing seminaries all throughout Europe. Vatican approved of it for about 10 years, then withdrew the approval. He rejected their withdrawal and continued to ordain.
Is it wrong of me to I'm sorry, I shouldn't have that reaction maybe, but I don't know. There's something at this, especially at this point in the age of Francis, it's a little hard to be upset at Archbishop Lefebvre of all
exactly.
people, right?
Exactly. He was a French, let's put it from the other side's point of view, he was a hopeless French reactionary, a hopeless conservative, theologically and politically, who made good. They hate that. He was successful. Paul VI tried to suppress him. John Paul II excommunicated him. 25 years later, his excommunicated bishops are back within the embrace of the church, ordaining priests with the approval of the church, and negotiating with the church to get the whole franchise. So, and Lefebvre is the founder of the traditionalist movement. Everything was focused with Lefebvre around the Mass. He used to say, all I want is the Mass. All I'm asking for is the Mass. That's the traditional Latin Mass. They wouldn't give it to him and threw him out for a time. And he said, you don't even have the right to throw me out, because my right as a priest to say the traditional liturgy supersedes papal authority.
Yeah.
Basically, that's what Lefebvre said. And Pope Benedict XVI implicitly agreed with that without making it explicit.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he came very close in his letter. I mean, in both Summorum Pontificum and his letter to the bishops, where he basically said that he talked about the way the Mass was changed, that this is not how the church operates. And you remember that quotation that we hung on to for years before Ratzinger became Pope? You remember that one that we loved so much about where he said that he finds it impossible to understand that anybody could have a problem with the old Mass,
yeah.
and that to then actually treat people like they're crazy,
right,
just because they want the very thing that the church told them was their holiest and highest
right.
possession. Like that,
it's now absolutely forbidden. He said,
"This is stupid. What is this? A Kafka novel?
Right.
This is stupid. We don't act like this."
Right. And that is the importance of Benedict XVI's papacy. Really, the importance of it is he reconciled, without making it official, he reconciled the position that Lefebvre took after the council to defend the traditional Mass. Benedict reconciled that position. Not only did he reconcile it, he embraced it and put it into the heart of canon law. So
it doesn't surprise me that Rothbard would have been pro-Lefebvre, because he was just pro-common sense, and he just hated, especially at that point, he really hated leftism. You know, I think
right.
he hated leftism in all its forms.
And Lefebvre was purely anti-left.
Yeah.
And also Lefebvre, now and again, they would call him an anti-Semite. And anyone who was called an anti-Semite, Rothbard immediately became interested in.
Well, I mean,
he knew Rothbard would never accept that at face value.
Well, he would look into it. He would at least look into it. Yeah, he knew it was a slogan.
Others he
meant to destroy people.
But he knew that Lefebvre was no anti-Semite.
Of course not.
But that has to be said. But anyhow, so that's Lefebvre. Whose show is this? Yours or mine?
Who even knows at this point? I've lost track.
But anyway, lists. So we didn't even get to my second list.
Tell me what the second list is.
I don't want to, because we haven't fifinished the first list.
All right, let's talk about more about the first list.
Well, which
I feel like I did a really crummy job compiling. Because we're going to go out to dinner in a few minutes,
right? And
I'm going to come up with a dozen
that's
people.
Where we need to have the mic on.
Yeah, I know.
But we can't.
If people could only hear what we say at dinner.
Well, that's one of my ideas that I have to talk to you about at dinner about. It's a reality show.
Okay. All right.
Anyway, thanks for your list of 50% Catholics who influenced you.
Glad to give it to you.
50% other. But we can go deeper into that in another program. But time is up. We got to go to dinner.
I'm starving. Plus, I had this glass of wine with no food in my stomach, so it's not good.
We've been liberated. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
All right, folks, that's going to do it. Now, next week, I've got coming up, I guess, well, if this is coming out on the week, next week, right. Michael Malice is going to come back, and we're going to talk about what left and right mean. Do they really mean anything? And if so, what? I've had numerous requests for an episode on this, and I've done a couple episodes on this, but one with Michael Malice is going to be unforgettable. So make sure you subscribe at tomwoods.com/iTunes, and I'll see you then.
Become a smarter libertarian in just 30 minutes a day. Visit tomwoods.com to subscribe to the show for free, and we'll see you next time.